Alright folks, if you haven't seen my other video on how to make 90s ambient downtempo like in Parasite Eve, go check that out. I go into a little bit more on the history of these types of soundtracks and the tools and techniques that the composers used. And it's important to call out because a lot of what we're using, actually 100% for this track, comes from sample packs that are from the era that these games were released. It's a really just quick, surefire way. And you'll even find a lot of these soundtracks, Silent Hill OST, Resident Evil, used a lot of the sounds from these sample packs. So let's get started and let's just go through the different elements within here. And first thing I have are these little kicks at the beginning. This comes from the Big Fish Audio Pod sample pack. And the kicks just sound like this. I have that going through a little bit of a delay here just to create some nice ambience. And then what I did was started to stack this up with this other sound also from the Big Fish Audio Pod sample pack. And so we have these two sounds kind of alternating. And to me, that creates a really, this like horror-like sound, almost like somebody's coming after you, in each stomp from the second track here is like some type of beast or something stepping on the floor. The kick above it kind of just puts some type of rhythmic element in this song, if we dare call it that. But when we send it through the delay, it also just creates some nice ambience as well. Next thing I did was grab this sound also from the Big Fish Audio Pod sample pack. It sounds like thus. So you'll see in my sampler down here, I took this sound and I honed in on just this little part at the beginning and looped it up. And then I pitched the sample down, put a little bit of release on here, and then in the Bitwig sampler, enabled 2 voices of polyphony. So as I transitioned into each bar in my song, I still had some release, so it wasn't like a abrupt cutoff. Now, this is a great way to get some very atmospheric horror sounds, is go and grab some of these sounds from a sample pack and pitch them down. And then you can go in, right, if I play a B2 here, if I put it back at the original pitch, back to that pitch down. So you can hear the instant change in that ambience and atmosphere just by simply pitching down a sample that, to be fair, was already pretty eerie to begin with. But just great atmospheric piece here. There's a little bit of musicality to this sample here, but a lot of atmosphere too. And we send that through a delay. Next sound we have is also from the Big Fish Audio Pod sample pack. So I took another sample track from here and honed in on this little piece. In this one, I didn't pitch at all. I just sent it through delay and played it at its original tempo of a C3. And I have this come in as we go into each phase. So it's almost like a transition type element to carry the song along. Next thing I have here is from the Big Fish Audio Alien Guitars sample pack, and it sounds like this. And so I took this sound, honed in on this one piece, and then just looped it through. I can almost hear, it sounds like a phone. You know, if you left an old school analog phone off the hook, kind of reminds me of that type of sound. And I just EQ'd to really focus in on that specific piece of the sound, a little bit of compression through a delay, but just repeating this element, I thought just increase the uncanniness of this song. It's kind of like this ostinato type effect going on with all the other elements. So everything together so far. And then what I did was brought in this sample from the Master Bits Meditation Zone sample pack. And this is just a sound of some jungle ambience here. So I came in my sampler, looped up a piece of it so we can get a nice long sustained note over multiple bars. And it sounds like this. And then with that ping pong loop on there, right, we could just loop between this. We could hold out a note for 10 minutes if we wanted to. That sent through a big reverb there just to put it out in space. And so once we add that in, it kind of fills in a lot of the gaps. And so in this piece here, I remove that kick and then increase how often this stomp sound happens. So we take away that kick element. It kind of creates this moment of emptiness and suspense where it kind of sounds like something's about to happen here. And that's when we start to transition into the next piece of the tune here. And that is this little horror pad sound here. Comes from the 0G analog to digital sample pack. And you'll see I took this sample here, changed the start point of it and looped it up and then pitched it down. Really great horror sound right out of the box there. And of course, you know, with a lot of these samples, you throw it in the sampler and you play at different pitches. You get all sorts of really cool sounds. And so we have that sound playing. It's kind of like this very classic horror movie sound that you'd even hear in a lot of songs by, you know, a producer like Source Direct or Photak from some of their works around the mid-90s, but just this very dissonant pad sound. And what we're doing here is we're transitioning from this more atmospheric portion of the song into kind of a more musical point of the song. But, you know, this moment here is kind of referencing something happening in the game, right? So there's this suspense, and then this chord drops, and it's kind of like that moment where something happens. Then what I did was copied that sample down, same sample from the previous track. I just moved the start point and added in these little stabs. And we're just playing these at different pitches on the keyboard to get some variation in there. And I just felt like it was very Silent Hill-esque to have these little weird industrial stabs in there layered up with everything. Now, next piece down here, we have that pad element. This to me just screams Silent Hill here. And so this is a sample from the 0G drum and bass concept function sample pack. And I changed the start point to just the end here. That's the sample at its original pitch. And I just pitched it down, so I'm playing it on a C2. All right, and that gives us a little more body to the sound instead of just a quick hit at its original tempo. So almost getting into pad territory, not quite, but then we take that and just play a little progression with it. Last thing we did down here is we brought in a pretty basic breakbeat here. I I forget which sample pack this came from, but just put it in mono, a little bit of compression, a little bit of chorus, and let it roll on top of that little horror pad progression. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you want this project file for Bitwig Studio, go check out my Patreon where all supporters will get a copy of not just this project file, but project files for other videos I've made and many more going forward. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one.